When the record player was the heart of the home, turntable memories Black families will never forget. There was a piece of furniture in every Black household that held more power than the television, more importance than the telephone, more meaning than anything else with a plug. It sat in the living room or the den, sometimes in a wooden console that also held the radio, and maybe a space for records. It had a hinged lid that lifted to reveal a spinning platter, a tone arm with a needle at the end, and the promise of a world contained in vinyl grooves. This was the record player, and if you grew up Black in America during the 1950s, 1960s, or 1970s, this machine was the heartbeat of your home. Before we dive into these memories, if you're new here, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another trip down memory lane. And as you watch, drop a comment below sharing your memories of the family record player. We love hearing your stories, and they make this community so special. The record player was not just a device for playing music. It was a gathering point, a source of joy, a teacher of culture, and a keeper of memories. The records that spun on its platter told the story of a family's taste, history, and aspirations. The scratches on those records marked moments when the needle had been dropped carelessly, or when the same song had been played so many times the groove itself was wearing thin. Every Black family had their record player stories, and those stories were woven into the fabric of daily life. This is the story of the record player in Black households, the story of the music it brought into our homes, the rituals that surrounded it, and the memories that spin in our minds like vinyl to this day. The record player arrived in Black households as part of the great democratization of music in the 20th century. Before recorded music, you heard music only when someone played it live, in church, at gatherings, from musicians on street corners. The phonograph, and later the record player, changed everything. Suddenly, you could own music. You could play it whenever you wanted, as many times as you wanted. The greatest performers in the world could be summoned into your living room with the drop of a needle. For Black families, this was revolutionary. The music that defined Black culture, blues, jazz, gospel, R&B, soul, could now be collected, preserved, and passed down. A family's record collection became a library of Black musical achievement, a curriculum of cultural education, a treasure that grew over years and decades. The record player was the machine that made this library accessible, the key that unlocked all that musical wealth. The technology evolved over the decades. The early phonographs gave way to console stereos that combined record players with radios and sometimes televisions in massive wooden cabinets. These consoles were furniture as much as electronics, designed to be displayed prominently in living rooms. By the 1960s and 1970s, component systems became popular. Separate turntables, amplifiers, and speakers that could be configured according to preference and budget. But whether console or component, the record player remained central to the home. The console stereo was a status symbol in many Black households. These were substantial pieces of furniture, often made of real wood with brass hardware, taking up significant space in the living room. A family that owned a good console stereo was announcing something about their place in the world. They had arrived, they had taste, they valued culture and music. The console might be polished weekly, dusted carefully, treated with the respect accorded to valuable possessions. Magnavox, Zenith, RCA, Motorola, these were the brands that dominated, each with their loyal customers who swore their preferred brand produced the best sound. The console stereo was often purchased on layaway, paid for over months or even years because a good one was a significant investment. But it was an investment that paid dividends in daily pleasure, in family gatherings enhanced by music, in the status it conferred. The console stereo was typically located in the most public room of the house, the living room or parlor where guests were received. Its presence announced that this was a household that valued music, that had the means and the taste to own quality equipment. Children were warned to be careful around the console, not to bump it or touch it without permission. The console stereo was adult territory, operated by parents and only sometimes, with supervision, by children old enough to be trusted. The ritual of playing a record was deliberate and almost sacred. You did not simply throw on music carelessly. You selected the record you wanted to hear, sliding it from its sleeve with care, handling it only by the edges to avoid getting fingerprints on the playing surface. You placed it on the turntable, making sure it was centered on the spindle. You turned on the power and waited for the platter to reach speed. Then, with steady hands, you lifted the tone arm and positioned the needle at the outer edge of the record, lowering it gently into the groove. The first sounds that emerged, the slight crackle and hiss before the music began, were part of the experience. They announced that something was about to happen, that music was coming, that the room was about to be transformed. Then the opening notes would arrive, and suddenly the living room was filled with voices and instruments, with rhythm and melody, with the presence of artists who might be thousands of miles away or decades in the past. Children learned the ritual by watching parents and older siblings. They learned not to touch the records without permission, not to drop the needle roughly, not to bump the turntable while a record was playing. They learned that records were fragile, that scratches were permanent, that carelessness could ruin something precious. These lessons in care and respect extended beyond the records themselves to a general understanding that valuable things required careful treatment. The record collection was a family archive, accumulated over years and reflecting changing tastes and life stages. The oldest records might be 78s, heavy and brittle, played on the slowest speed setting. These were relics from an earlier era, often inherited from parents or grandparents, their labels faded and their grooves worn from decades of play. The LPs that dominated collections were 33 1-3 RPM albums, 12 inches across, capable of holding entire albums on each side. 45s, the 7-inch singles with the large center holes, were often the domain of teenagers, purchased individually when a particular song captured the moment. The collection told a story. The gospel records spoke of faith and church connections. The jazz albums revealed sophistication and cultural awareness. The soul and R&B records tracked the evolution of black popular music through the decades. A record purchased in 1962 and still in the collection in 1975 carried memories of who you were when you bought it, what was happening in your life, why that particular music mattered at that particular time. The organization of the collection varied from household to household. Some families organized alphabetically by artist, others grouped by genre, gospel here, jazz there, soul in another section. Some had no system at all. The records mixed together in a way that required searching through the whole collection to find what you wanted. However they were organized, the records were treasures, and the collection as a whole was greater than the sum of its parts. Certain records occupied special places in black household collections. Marvin Gaye's What's Going On was almost universally present, an album that spoke to the moment it was released and continued to speak to every moment after. Stevie Wonder's albums from the 1970s, Talking Book, Inner Visions, Songs in the Key of Life, were essential, representing the peak of artistic achievement in popular music. Aretha Franklin, James Brown, Curtis Mayfield, Earth, Wind and Fire, these artists appeared in collection after collection, their music so central to black life that their absence would have been conspicuous. Gospel records held their own section in many collections, often played on Sunday mornings to set the tone for the day or to provide music when the family could not make it to church. Mahalia Jackson, James Cleveland, the Edwin Hawkins singers, Shirley Caesar, these names graced album covers that were well worn from regular play. The gospel records were not just entertainment, but ministry, bringing the church into the home, sustaining faith between Sundays. Jazz records marked a certain sophistication, a family that appreciated the complexity and artistry of America's classical music. Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Duke Ellington, Count Basie. These albums might not be played as frequently as the soul and R&B records, but their presence in the collection signified something about the family's cultural aspirations. A father who collected jazz was passing on an appreciation for musical excellence that his children would carry forward. The record player was the center of family gatherings and celebrations. When relatives came to visit, the records came out. When holidays were celebrated, special albums provided the soundtrack. When the family just wanted to be together on a Saturday afternoon, the record player filled the silence with music that everyone knew and loved. Birthday parties for children might feature the Jackson 5 or Stevie Wonder, music that got young bodies moving and dancing. Adult gatherings leaned toward the smooth sounds of Marvin Gaye or the sophisticated funk of Earth, Wind and Fire. Holiday gatherings had their own special records, Nat King Cole at Christmas, gospel albums at Easter, the music becoming inseparable from the occasions themselves. The dancing that happened in living rooms during these gatherings was spontaneous and joyful. Furniture might be pushed aside to create space. Couples would pair off, moving together to slow songs, while faster songs got everyone up and moving individually or in groups. Children watched their parents dance and learn. Not just the steps, but the idea that music was something you responded to with your body, that joy should be expressed physically, that dancing was a natural part of life. Saturday was the day for serious music listening in many households. The weekend provided time that weekdays did not, hours that could be devoted to exploring the record collection. A father might spend a Saturday afternoon playing his favorite albums, sharing music with children who sat and listened, absorbing not just the sounds, but their father's love for them. A mother might play her records while cleaning, the music making housework more bearable, her voice singing along with familiar lyrics. The Saturday ritual might include trips to the record store, expeditions to add new treasures to the collection. Record stores in black neighborhoods knew their clientele, stocking the music that their customers wanted, displaying new releases prominently, playing samples to entice purchases. The experience of browsing through bins of records, flipping through album covers, discovering something new, this was its own form of entertainment, a prelude to the pleasure of actually playing the music at home. Coming home with a new record was exciting. The cellophane wrapper was removed carefully, revealing the album cover in all its glory. The cover art was studied, the liner notes read, every detail absorbed before the record was even played. Then came the moment of first listening, the needle dropping into virgin grooves, hearing the music for the very first time. A new record was not just a purchase, but an experience, a moment that would be remembered. The album cover was art in itself, and black families often displayed particularly striking covers prominently. The gatefold albums that opened like books provided extra visual real estate for photography and design. Album covers introduced black families to black visual artists whose work graced graced these canvases. The covers became icons: Marvin Gaye's contemplative pose on What's Going On, the cosmic imagery of Parliament Funkadelic, the elegant portraits of Diana Ross. Children spent hours studying album covers while the music played. The covers provided context for the sound, visual imagery that enhanced the listening experience. They provided information about the artists, photographs that showed what they looked like, liner notes that told their stories, credits that revealed who had played on the recordings. The album cover was the social media of its era, the primary way that fans connected with artists visually. Some album covers pushed boundaries, featuring imagery that was provocative or political. Ohio Players covers were famous for their sensuality. Marvin Gaye's Here My Dear was notable for its personal nature. These covers sparked conversations, raised eyebrows, and sometimes had to be hidden from view when certain company came over. The album cover was a statement, and what a family displayed on their record shelf said something about who they were. The care and maintenance of records was a household responsibility taken seriously. Records were vulnerable. Heat could warp them, dust could scratch them, mishandling could damage them permanently. Proper storage meant keeping records upright, not stacked flat, in a location away from direct sunlight and heat sources. The inner sleeves protected the vinyl from dust, and replacing worn sleeves with new ones was part of collection maintenance. Cleaning records was a ritual for serious collectors. Special brushes removed dust from grooves before playing. Anti-static cloths reduced the crackle and pop that accumulated from static electricity. Some households invested in record cleaning solutions and dedicated cleaning systems, understanding that clean records sounded better and lasted longer. The needle itself required attention. A worn needle could damage records, grinding into grooves rather than gliding through them. Replacing the stylus periodically was essential for protecting the collection. The needle had to be kept clean, free from the dust and debris that accumulated with use. Careful collectors checked their needles regularly, understanding that this small component was crucial to the entire system. For children, the record player was an object of fascination and frustration. Fascination because of the magic it produced, sound emerging from spinning plastic, music appearing from seemingly nowhere. Frustration because access was often restricted, the equipment too valuable to be trusted to young hands. The desire to operate the record player themselves, to choose their own music and play it when they wanted, was a mark of growing maturity. Older children might be allowed to play records under supervision, learning the proper technique for handling vinyl, lowering the needle, adjusting the volume. This responsibility was granted gradually as trust was earned. A child who demonstrated careful handling might eventually be allowed to play records without supervision, a significant marker of maturity and responsibility. Teenagers often wanted their own record players, separate from the family system, allowing them to play their own music at their own volume without interference. A portable record player in a bedroom provided privacy and independence, a space where musical taste could be explored without parental judgment. The transition from the family record player to one's own system was part of the broader transition from childhood dependence to adolescent autonomy. The sounds that accompanied the record player experience were distinctive and memorable. The click of the power switch, the soft hum as the turntable began to spin, the gentle thump of the needle entering the groove, the crackle and pop that preceded the music, sounds that became almost comforting in their familiarity, the mechanical sound of the changer dropping the next record in a stack. These sounds were the music before the music, the overture to every listening experience. The sound quality of vinyl was different from the digital audio that would eventually replace it. There was warmth to the sound, a fullness that came from the analog nature of the medium. The bass was deep, the highs were crisp, and the overall presentation had a character that listeners bonded with. Even the imperfections, the occasional pop or skip, became part of the listening experience, marks of a medium that was physical and real. A skipping record was a minor crisis, requiring intervention to move the needle past the scratch. A warped record, its playback wavering as the turntable turned, was a tragedy. A favorite album compromised, perhaps beyond repair. These physical vulnerabilities of vinyl made the medium feel precious, more valuable than the digital files that would eventually replace it, precisely because it could be damaged, precisely because it required care. The record player was also a teacher, introducing black children to their musical heritage. A parent playing old records was conducting a music history lesson, even if it was never framed that way. This is what we listened to when I was your age. This is the song that was playing when your mother and I met. This artist changed everything. Listen to this. Through the record player, the story of black music was transmitted from generation to generation. Children absorbed this education without realizing they were being educated. They developed preferences, favorites among the family collection, songs they asked to hear again and again. They learned to recognize artists by sound, to distinguish the production styles of different eras, to understand the evolution from doo-wop to soul to funk. This musical knowledge became part of their cultural identity, a foundation that would shape their own musical tastes as they grew. The record player also introduced children to the concept of albums as artistic statements. Unlike the singles format, which emphasized individual songs, the album encouraged listening to a full collection of songs in the order the artist intended. Concept albums like Marvin Gaye's What's Going On or Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life were meant to be experienced from beginning to end, a journey rather than a destination. Learning to listen to albums this way was an education in artistic appreciation. The social dimensions of the record player extended beyond the family. Records were borrowed and lent, creating networks of musical sharing throughout neighborhoods and social circles. A friend might bring over a new album to share, playing it on your family's record player and introducing you to sounds you might not have discovered otherwise. The records that circulated through these networks helped create shared musical experiences within communities. Record parties were social events organized around the record player. Someone would host, providing the equipment and the space, while guests brought records to share. The music would play for hours, guests taking turns choosing what came next, debates erupting about what should follow what. These parties were opportunities for musical discovery and social bonding, the record player serving as the focal point for communal gathering. The record player also facilitated romantic moments. A young man might carefully select which records to play when his girlfriend visited, crafting a musical atmosphere conducive to romance. Slow songs created opportunities for close dancing. Lyrics expressed feelings that might be difficult to put into words directly. Many relationships progressed to the soundtrack provided by carefully chosen records. By the 1980s, the record player was beginning to face competition from new technologies. Cassette tapes offered portability and the ability to create custom mixes. CDs arrived promising perfect sound without the pops and scratches of vinyl. The Walkman and then the iPod made music personal and portable in ways the record player never could. Slowly, the record player retreated from its central place in the home. The vinyl records that had seemed so essential became obsolete, at least in the eyes of the market. Record stores closed or transformed into CD shops. New releases came increasingly on compact disc rather than vinyl. The record collections that had been built over decades gathered dust in closets and basements, their value unclear in a world that moved on to new formats. But vinyl never entirely disappeared. Collectors continued to treasure their records, recognizing the value in what others were discarding. DJs, particularly in hip-hop, kept turntables alive as instruments of creative expression. And in the 2000s and beyond, vinyl experienced a renaissance, younger generations discovering what their parents had known, that there was something special about the format, something that digital files could not replicate. For those who grew up with record players as the center of their musical lives, the memories remain vivid and precious. The weight of a record in your hands, the care required to place the needle correctly, the anticipation as the first sounds emerged from the speakers, the shared experience of listening as a family, gathered in the living room, connected by the music filling the space. These memories are sensory and specific. The smell of the record sleeve, the feel of the volume knob turning under your fingers, the sight of the record spinning, the label becoming a blur at full speed, the sound, always the sound, music that accompanied every important moment of childhood, and that still, decades later, can transport you instantly back to the living room, where you first heard it. The record player was more than a machine. It was a member of the family, a constant presence through years and decades, a witness to celebrations and ordinary days alike. The music it played became the soundtrack of life, inseparable from the memories of the times when it played. Hearing certain songs today can bring tears, not because of the songs themselves, but because of everything they represent. People now gone, times now past, a world that exists only in memory. What records were in your family's collection? What was your first memory of the family record player? What songs transport you back to childhood when you hear them today? Share your memories in the comments below. Let us celebrate together the turntables that spun the soundtracks of our lives. And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel and ring that bell so you never miss another journey into the beautiful past that made us who we are. This is our story. This is our music. This is our record player spinning still in memory, playing the songs that made us who we are.